Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that focuses on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Thursday morning, political fighters, and welcome to the July 16th, 2026 edition of Choose Views. 773-763-9278 is the number. And, of course, you can find my show on Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, and YouTube. Email me at richard@wcpt820.com and follow me on all the socials under Choose Views. Catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, and iHeartRadio. There you can get Choose Views, featured interviews, Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, the great Patty Vasquez, Driving It Home, It's the Democracy Stupid with Edwin Eisendrath, Out Chicago, and all of our other great shows and interviews. And, of course, you guys have got to tune into the Politics Bar in the evenings, Matt McNeil's show and The Gailey Show. And after you do that, you've got another homework assignment to make your way over to heartlandsignal.com because that's where all the other good stuff is. What's happening at Heartland Signal today? U.S. Representative Gwen Moore, again, Democrat of Wisconsin, as I mentioned before, she is really giving them the business about the 250th anniversary of our country and how Democrats have got to still keep fighting and making sure that everybody's involved and included in that conversation. So make your way over to heartlandsignal.com so that you can check out our all of our great articles and posts that are there. So today's show, what's happening on today's show? We have a couple of cool things that we've done. We had a chance to talk with the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, Peggy Flanagan, the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota. She will be with us in the 6:30 hour in a quick interview segment that we did. She's a 2026 candidate for U.S. Senate in Minnesota as well. And if you guys recall, earlier in this week, had a conversation with Angie Craig, who's also running for that Senate seat. So we'll have that segment in the 6:30 hour. Professor Alexandra Nadapoff, she's a Harvard law professor and author of America Unfinished, 250 Years of Law and Governance. I'm looking forward to chatting with her about kind of the same thing, where we are after 250 years and what have we not gotten done and what needs to still be worked on. And there are a lot of things, as you heard in my conversation yesterday with Professor Eddie Glaude. Qasim Rashid will be with us. He's author, activist, and human rights attorney. He's also the host of the Sirius XM podcast. Let's address this. In case you guys didn't know, he's also an attorney. So there you go. So that's what's happening today on today's show and who we've got riding along with us. Yesterday, one of the things that I think a lot of people were surprised to hear is how definitive Professor Eddie Glaude was about we've got a lot of work to do, and we keep telling ourselves as a country, and this is on the heels of his book as well, but also on the heels of what's happened with our 250th anniversary. He talked a lot about the work that we still have to do, and I said on a few occasions during that interview that it's important that we acknowledge the things that are not right or that are not perfect or that we're not happy with. The more that we do that, the better that the country will be, because it forces us to acknowledge our greatness, but it also forces us to acknowledge or encourages us to acknowledge the things that we have as our blind spots. And I'm kind of old school in that way, that if something's not right, let's identify it, let's get it corrected, and let's move forward. And that's what Professor Glaude and I were talking about. So make sure you find him and follow him, and really, you know, he's a great source for tapping into the things that are part of our history. So there you go. On today's show, our question of the day is this. For those, and this is going to be part of my my segment that we'll have after the first break. For those who watched or heard or saw the clips from yesterday's hearings, what were your thoughts of the Todd Blanche and Jay Clayton Senate confirmation hearings. So again, for those who watched, heard, or saw clips on social media or whatever, what were your thoughts of the Todd Blanche and Jay Clayton Senate confirmation hearings? I'm going to have some commentary about that, but I want to hear what you guys have to say about what you saw, what your thoughts were. There's going to be more. It's not over. And so today there will be a number of other questions that will come. And so when I ask that question, I mean that in the space of what you thought about them and their testimony, but also what you thought about the questions themselves and who the questions came from and how the questions were presented. So I'm curious about sort of your whole observation of that, because the internet was loaded up with folks and how they felt about it. And certainly, I've got an opinion about it. So I'll share that with you guys after we come back from the first break. But let me know what your thoughts are there. You can certainly give us a call at 773-763-9278. Send us a text. We'll try to get that read on the air. And last but not least, you can go to our Facebook page and leave your thoughts and comments there so that we can chat about them. But yeah, Henrietta, it was interesting to see some of the responses of the hearings, and it'll be interesting today to see what goes down. What's the next phase of this process? So there you guys go. But that being said, give us a call at 773-763-9278. We'll try to get you squeezed in as always, and take your comments and thoughts as we always do. And as we're getting closer to this weekend, and the heat is what it is, everybody please be super precautious if you're doing outside stuff. Take a break, get yourself some water or whatever you choose, your beverage of choice. But just be safe these next couple of days because the heat's still going to be with us, and make sure that you check on people that that might be, that may have a little bit of issue with the heat and struggling with, or potentially struggling with that. So, and if you're out and about and you're doing stuff with the kids, throw some water on them, okay? Go get a bucket of water and throw it on them, because they won't tell you. They'll just keep playing. They'll just keep going and going, right, Henry? And they'll just running back and forth, and then suddenly they're like, "Mom, Dad, I'm not feeling good." So get off your phones, parents, while you're at the soccer matches and the baseball games, and throw some water on your children. Now, I say that only because I saw something, and you guys kind of have an idea how my brain works. I saw something yesterday when I was heading, when I left the studio, and there was a dad and his son walking from one of the baseball parks not too far from the studio. And the kid was just like, it was probably a lesson in discipline, but also a lesson in strengthening your child or making him responsible. But the dad was walking about 3 steps ahead of his son. The son had his baseball bag with his bats in it, and you could see it was like full up. The kid was just dragging. The dad was on his phone, just kind of walking along. And I thought, okay, I get it. But the kid looks like he was struggling. But it was kind of funny to watch. Yeah, so just be careful with everybody that's out and about. Make sure you're keeping people hydrated that are around you, and most importantly, yourself. So that being said, let's take a little bit of an early break because we got a lot to cover today. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and our good friends at AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. If you're just tuning in, this is Choose Views, and I'm Richard Chu. And we have a couple of quick Choose Views news items on this date of July 16th, 2026. Mortgage rates spike to their highest levels in nearly a year. Mortgage rates climbed to their highest levels since last August of 2025, sidelining potential buyers stuck between soaring rates and record housing prices. The average 30-year rate rose to 6.65% from 6.58% last week, leading to a 7% weekly drop in mortgage applications. Analysts attribute the increase to rising fuel prices caused by the Iran war, though rates stabilized on Wednesday following a better-than-expected inflation report. The median price of a U.S. home recently reached an all-time high, further decreasing the purchasing power of first-time buyers. The number of long-term unemployed nears a 5-year high. Almost 2 million Americans have been out of work for 6 months or more, a nearly 5-year high. In June, the long-term unemployed accounted for more than 27% of all unemployed Americans. White-collar workers appear to be the hardest hit, particularly those in their prime working years, between the ages of 25 and 54. Though overall unemployment remains fairly low, the sluggish rates of hiring means more people could end up in the long-term unemployment bucket. And unfortunately, as I said earlier this week, running through their savings and not making the investments that they might need to make through their employer. Meta is being sued by ex-employees over improper AI use in layoffs. A new lawsuit claims Meta used the AI-powered software to target workers with disabilities or those who took medical leave for mass layoffs. The case was brought by 26 former employees, all of whom were notified in May that they'd be losing their jobs. The plaintiffs say Meta relied on metrics like productivity and AI token usage when determining who'd be laid off, leaving those who'd missed work for personal or family medical situations at a disadvantage. A Meta spokesperson maintained that such decisions are made by people, not AI. Boy, they better hope that that's 100% true. All right, JP Morgan is set to be the first bank valued at $1 trillion. Many of us do business with JP Morgan Chase, and it's about to make some significant history. Within months, the Wall Street mainstay could become the first bank ever valued at $1 trillion, a milestone mainly reached by tech giants, of course, like Tesla and Meta. JP Morgan is currently riding a deal-making wave that on Tuesday pushed its shares to a record high and its quarterly profit to a level near never but reached before by any U.S. bank. With all of these firsts come, though, some higher expectations. The $1 trillion milestone does not guarantee a smooth path forward, according to many market analysts. So with that success, JP Morgan comes responsibility, is kind of how I'll interpret that, Henry. All right, guys, there you go. A couple of quick Choose Views news items on this Thursday, July 16th, 2026. Thanks for being with us this morning. Today on Live, Local, and Progressive, Joan Esposito will be talking to Marjorie Hershey, Professor Emeritus of Political Science at Indiana University, Dr. John Murphy, Professor of Communication at the University of Illinois, and expert on the history of American public address and political rhetoric. And then Jennifer Schulze, former local TV news exec, reporter, and producer based here in Chicago, and author of Indistinct Chatter on Substack. That's Live, Local, and Progressive, weekdays 2 to 5 here on WCPT, the Heartland Signal website, and TuneIn. And then tonight on Driving It Home, Patty Vasquez will be joined by film reviewer Mike Crowley of You'll Probably Agree Reviews, Michael Negron, Senior Fellow for Economy Opportunity at the Center for American Progress, and also a former special assistant to the president for the economic policy in the Biden-Harris White House. And then last but not least, assistant former director for Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity under J.B. Pritzker. So Michael's been busy. Adam Duda is a candidate for Wisconsin State Senate in the District 11. Will be with Patty as well. So there you go. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez, weekdays 5 to 7 here on WCPT, Heartland Signal website, TuneIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And then tomorrow on Choose Views, Karen Byrne, co-host of True Blue Politics podcast, will be with us. Illinois State Rep Will Guzzardi, a Democrat of Chicago, and Danielle Butterfield, President and Executive Director of Priorities USA, will be with us as well. So that's what's happening. We'll bring you back up to speed on those a little bit later in the show. And I said earlier, the question of the day. Let me repeat that, and then I'll kind of lean into something that I took from the hearings. The question of the day, of course, is who of those who watched or heard the show or saw the clips, what were your thoughts of the Todd Blanche and Jay Clayton Senate confirmation hearings? Curious about that because I want to know, what your thoughts are, obviously, as always with our question of the day, not just of the what their responses were, but of the hearings at large, and the questions that were put to them. So, let us know your thoughts there. But for me, and I will share this in, kind of my commentary in terms of something to chew on. I saw a certain amount of arrogance, pompous activity and behavior from two unqualified people, frankly, that have actually changed their way of being in the roles that they've been. What do I mean by that? Okay. So both sides of the aisle, if you will, Democrat and Republican senators, at some point there was you could see a visual amount of confusion and disconnect, because they've had conversations with these guys in private, and they've worked with them, as many of them said, in the past in some way. And it's my belief, based on what I saw and then also what I heard, that some of the senators, even on the left, were willing to give each of them a chance, meaning Blanche and Clayton, a chance, if they were just honest and answered the questions in a way that connected to what they knew about these guys in their previous work. So what was happening, though, Henry, is that these guys were, well, let me stay on this part of the point. I think about Senator Warner, who said that, basically, this is not the guy that I knew. This is not the person that I've known in the past. And a version of that came from both sides of the aisle, from a handful of senators that said, you changed. You used to not be this way. You used to be about the law. You used to be about, business and getting things done and doing it in as bipartisan of a way as possible. But the only thing that's changed, that would have changed you potentially, is Donald Trump. And a handful of the senators said things along the lines of, you're performing for an audience of one, or you must feel very deflated, or you must be really feeling a sense of loss of your dignity because of the way in which you're answering these questions, the way in which you're handling this confirmation hearing. And that, to me, speaks to another part of this time where we are, and how people who are qualified suddenly, kind of disqualify themselves by not standing on what they've probably been successful at and pretty good at in their careers. They've given that up for a man who, for whatever reason, they've come to believe is a threat to them. Now, I get the part about your family or yourself being threatened physically or any harm. That part's different. But career threat, I mean, if you look at it like this is how it was put to me talking with a friend yesterday. If you built a career doing it for the most part, not for the most part, you've done the right thing, done it the right way, and in politics or the political scene, you've been somewhat partisan, but most of the time fairly bipartisan because of the role that you've been in. And I think about Todd Blanche as an example with the Southern District in New York. He's had to call basically balls and strikes. He doesn't get to say, was it a curveball or a knuckleball or, a slider. He's just had to call it. And that he's moved that in recent times because of Trump. So I see this and think, you've disqualified yourself because you've moved for a person, not for the Constitution, which both Clayton and Blanche are supposed to be honoring, and they're not. So some of the things that took place that were clearly, what everybody's talking about. Todd Blanche had what many call a slip of the tongue. Some refer to it as a moment where, he spoke the truth when he said he was asked a question by one of his own, if you will. Senator John Kennedy asked about his friendship with Donald Trump, and Blanche referred to him as Trump in the answer as I'm his lawyer. But then he corrected himself and says was his lawyer. So, he clearly has moved his needle in a direction that is favoring Donald Trump, and to not speak the truth that many of the senators there have known him to typically speak. He got pressed on that. And he got pressed in a couple of other areas by not really speaking truth about or transparency about the Epstein files and his involvement with Ghislaine Maxwell, where he said he was asked a question about, if he's confirmed, would he sit down with some of the women who were victims or, as I say, survivors? And he made up I can't sit with them because they have an attorney representation and so forth and so on, which is categorically not true. Most of the time when you sit with a person, they want their attorney to be present for obvious reasons. And when he was pressed on, but you met with Ghislaine Maxwell, he got upset. He got flustered. Clayton's kind of the same thing. He tried to pretend like he was not going to answer questions by saying, I'm not going to get into this with you. Well, no, sir, you're there to get into it with them because you're, being investigated, interrogated, interviewed for one of the most powerful positions in our government, and that is the director of the National Intelligence Agency. That's a big deal. You're going to talk with foreign leaders about what's going on with our country, but you can't talk to our senators either side of the aisle. But the Democrats really were the ones that sort of ticked him off. And his involvement in, his belief in the 2020 election not being won by Joe Biden. One of the questions that they all leaned into is who won the 2020 election? And he kept going back to Joe Biden was certified as a president. He never said, yes, Joe Biden won. I thought, and I'll say this, and then we got to go to a break. I thought my other question, and kudos to Senator Ossoff and the others, but my question would have been, Henry, so if your answer is the Electoral College is the answer and how Joe Biden, he got the electoral votes, I would say then, so who won the 2016 election and the 2024 election based on your logic about the Electoral College? To trap him in his own, a narrative. But, I'm not criticizing the senators. They did what they could with two people who were just trying to tap dance around and make Donald happy. And that's ultimately what this was all about. So there you go, guys. Something to chew on. Let's take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chew. This is Chew's Views on WCPT AM 820 here in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM, as well as 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and now AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chew. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Choose Views. State politics, you guys know that listen are important to me, and making sure that we have folks who are state leaders doing their thing and how that's important to our process on a federal level. Right now, Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan is a name that so many people have heard. Didn't know much about her background, and then boom, all of a sudden now we do, and she's just been leading with a passion. She's also a candidate for U.S. Senate. And we have the luxury of having her with us this morning. Good morning, Madam Lieutenant Governor, and welcome to Choose Views.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, it's not just hot in the Midwest right now in terms of the real temperature. It's hot politically. We've got some important races. All the races are important, but there's some that particularly right now we've got to we've got to win. And one of them is you're facing off with some competitive folks right there in the good state of Minnesota. Tell us about your campaign. Tell us about your race.
Sure, absolutely. So I am running for the United States Senate for the seat that's being vacated by Senator Tina Smith, who is an incredible leader and who's also endorsed my campaign. But I'm running to make sure that people can afford the lives they want to live. I am a kid who grew up on the margins, and we relied on Section 8 to keep food on the table. Medicaid was my health care, and SNAP, kept my belly full. And so, this feels really personal. There are people who feel like the bottom could fall out at any moment, or the bottom has fallen out. And I'm running for them. I'm running for the mom who told her kiddo to put something back at the supermarket because they don't have enough money to pay for everything that's in their cart with the high cost of groceries. I'm running for the family who's trying to decide whether or not they're going to go to the doctor because they're afraid of how large the bill may be. And I'm running for people who are sick and tired of, seeing these, ridiculous ads all of the time because of the big money in our politics. And so I'm excited about this race. We've got a primary August 11th before we head into the general. And, I'm just all about the many versus the money. We're with the many, and I like our chances.
That's exciting to hear. Grassroots is something that comes to mind when I think about you and an activist in that regard. And you, for lack of better words, kind of cut your teeth way back in the Wayback Machine as one that was part of the Minnesota Board of Education. Tell us a little bit about that experience and how that has been one of the foundation items as you run now for U.S. Senate.
Sure. So I ran for office as a 24-year-old who was 2 years out of college for the Minneapolis Board of Education, and I was the youngest person and the first Native American woman to be elected to serve on that board. And we did so doing exactly what you talked about, the grassroots. I thought, well, I'm 24, I don't have any kids in school, and there are a lot of folks who said, oh, don't bother, knocking in, quote unquote, those neighborhoods because, those people don't vote. And I was like, I am those people, and we deserve to have a voice at the school board level. I ran, I won, and then got to work, making sure that communities and neighborhoods that for quite some time were being ignored had a voice at the table, brought student voices to the table. Was part of the folks who created the Minneapolis Youth Congress to make sure that youth voice was incorporated into our policy making. And I'm really proud of that work. And what I also saw is, just how decisions at the federal level continue to impact our ability to educate our children. Congress at the time, frankly, several years before, had committed to funding IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, at 40%. They have never, ever made that commitment. And, and so we are in this moment where we continue to see the things that I battled as a school board member and putting together budgets over 20 years ago currently, because Congress needs to follow through on their promise to fully fund special education at the level they committed to. I think that'd make a huge difference in our schools, and it's something that, I am really excited to get to work on in the United States Senate.
You have been, and thank you for that. You speak about the history, the learning, the being involved right there on the ground and going to those neighborhoods or those areas. And you and I have something in common. We are folks of color. And I have to ask you this question as a person that was right near Governor Tim Walz in the 2024 campaign, how it impacted you as an American citizen, as a government official, but also a woman of color, to see the country not open up its heart that way when it came to Kamala Harris in 2024. How did that impact you?
So it was disappointing, to say the least. I think Kamala Harris really carried so much for all of us, our hopes and our dreams and ability to see ourselves in places that we've, not yet been. I know we will get there, but it was difficult, and it was particularly difficult as a mom of a 13-year-old Native American girl who was very hopeful. But, we did 77 events for the Harris Walz campaign in 90 days and did so joyfully and hopefully. And that continues to be the way that we need to conduct ourselves because, listen, I know that we have already made tremendous progress. I think about when I was coming up, Geraldine Ferraro was who I saw, right?
Yeah.
And now, my daughter sees her mom, which, she's a middle schooler, so she's not that impressed. But, also, so former Secretary Deb Haaland, who's now running for governor of New Mexico, Sharice Davids, who's serving in Congress, and a whole host of other Native women who are running and winning. And so I think, I'm trying to teach my daughter that we have been leaders since time immemorial. It is just the rest of society that is catching up, to us. And I'm not running to make history, but it is about darn time that we had the first Native American woman ever to serve in the United States Senate. Democracy works best when it accurately reflects the community it seeks to represent. And so, this is a good thing for democracy, and I'm excited for what this means for the future of our country.
Without a doubt, and I think it's okay to be part of running for something that does further define or better define all of our communities. It's the thing that we should be proud of, given the fact that we just celebrated 250 years. So I'm pushing for all of us to speak to the things that make us unique as a country, and oftentimes that's our community and our communities of color and culture. So, kudos to you there. What do you when you look at the big elephant in the room right now, and it's touching everybody, and that's money in politics, dark money in politics. I go down the path of not all money in politics is bad, but dark money in politics, unknown money, scandalous money is bad in politics. How are you navigating that? Because there have been groups, we had it here in Illinois with our Senate race with our lieutenant governor getting hit, and other candidates that were hit by outside money. Congresswoman Kelly was hit by outside money. So was Lieutenant Governor Stratton. You're dealing with the same thing in Minnesota. How are we navigating through this right now?
Well, deciding to not take a dime of corporate PAC money in this campaign was one of the easiest decisions that I've ever made, because I think that there are plenty of, corporate interests, special interests, who have plenty of representation in Washington. It's regular folks who need it. And unfortunately, this is something that we see on both sides of the aisle. I know people absolutely know that Citizens United has broken our politics. And I think the best way to end Citizens United is to demonstrate that we can run and win strong grassroots, people-powered campaigns. Right now, there's $13 million that's been spent against us so far, $1 million a week. And, these are entities, these dark money groups, these corporate PACs who are spending money in support of my opponent, Congresswoman Angie Craig. And this is, we know there's crypto and big oil and health insurance companies. AIPAC is also involved in this race. And I think the question that people have to ask themselves is why? And I think for, this race, I am a big supporter of Medicare for all. And my opponent, Angie Craig, does not support it. And I think that's why health insurance companies are funding her race. Big oil has weighed in this race, and she's someone who's voted for drilling on public lands. And I also know in Minnesota, it really matters. And I know across the heartland, that farmers are able to fix their own damn equipment. And Congresswoman Craig does not support right to repair. And John Deere has invested tens of thousands of dollars in her race. So this is what we're up against. And I know my sister, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, who I have a lot of hope that I will be able to serve with in the U.S. Senate, she also understood that this people power is what matters. And you just got to get on the ground. You got to meet folks where they're at. And, that's why we'll be victorious. But it is something we have never seen before, this level of spending. And again, it's the many versus the money. I am with the many, and I'm betting on us.
Do you get the sense in the state, excuse me, Lieutenant Governor, that the people in the state that are voting are able to use their common sense, use their brain power to go, that just doesn't make any sense, whatever the ad might be or whoever might be the person in the ad that you see, I see. Do you feel that the voters have enough discernment to say, yeah, I know they're dropping a bunch of money in here, but they're dropping a bunch of money and it doesn't make any sense what those ads are producing, to then be able to say, but you know what? I'm still riding with this candidate because he or she is the real deal. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is, the work that candidates have done on the ground ahead of the tsunami of money coming into these races. I'm someone who's been doing work in communities across Minnesota for almost 20 years. I was in the legislature. I ran the Children's Defense Fund, and served as lieutenant governor for the last 7 years and some change. And so, I think that matters, that people have seen folks in action, are building relationships across the state and relying on those. But, this dark money comes in because folks know that it has some level of impact, which is why, we are working to make sure that we knock 100,000 doors by the end of this month and knock an additional 100,000 in the 11 days of August leading up to the primary, because we can't take anything for granted. But what I will say is what's really frustrating about a lot of these ads that are coming into our state is just how impacted we have been by ICE. And I know that you all experienced it as well in Operation Midway Blitz. We have experienced it with Operation Metro Surge.
Yeah.
Thousands of ICE agents here, 2 Minnesotans killed, children traumatized. The economic impact is staggering. And, this is one of the points of difference between myself and my opponent. She voted for the Laken Riley Act, which strips immigrants of due process and allows for indefinite detention, and was the only Minnesota Democrat to do so. Now, these ads are trying to remake her image as if she's been fighting, for the immigrant community for a long time. And I just think about, I was in a church basement in January of 2025, organizing shoulder to shoulder with the immigrant community because we knew what was coming. Trump didn't make it a secret that he had a mass deportation agenda, and we need folks with good relationships with the community, but we also need folks with good judgment to say, we can stand with the immigrant community and not just when it's politically expedient for us. So I think some of the misleading ads are frustrating to me, but that's why we just got to do the work and rely on our grassroots supporters in Minnesota and across the country.
As we wrap up, Lieutenant Governor, talk a little bit about the youth vote in the state and just let us know real quickly where you are there and what you see as opportunities as we go forward.
Absolutely. So young people are paying attention like never before. And in fact, on the first day of early voting, I was with a young woman who just graduated from a local high school who voted with me for the first time. And we are seeing young people registering and requesting absentee ballots in higher numbers than we've seen before, because our young people know that their futures, whether or not, they can purchase a home, can they afford their lives. This is one of the first times, I think, in our country's history where there's real questions about whether or not our children are going to have a better life than we do. That's unacceptable. And so, we've been endorsed by, high school Democrats, young Democrats, because this is the work that I've also done, shoulder to shoulder with young people. And young people are a big part of our campaign, who are our campaign fellows, who are our organizers on the ground. And you got to show up where young people hang out. And I think that is also, right, like we can't expect folks to come to us. And so that is, also been what this campaign is all about. We've done over 250 events all across the state of Minnesota, and that has been the joy of this campaign, has been meeting people face to face, hearing their stories, and being able to carry those stories into this campaign. And it's why we're fighting for Medicare for all. It's why we're fighting to raise the minimum wage and to get big money out of our politics, because it's what people deserve. And I'm excited about the coalition we're building that absolutely includes young people.
That's so great to hear, Lieutenant Governor. Let folks know how they can find you, how they can get involved in your campaign if they choose to do so.
Absolutely. So folks can visit PeggyFlanagan.com to volunteer, to make a donation, or to just learn more. I think, there are a lot of races happening across this country. Don't sleep on Minnesota. There is, a big race here, and I think that will help determine the future of the Democratic Party. Are we part of, corporate Dems who cater to special interests, or are we supporting folks who are with the people and know who they are beholden to? And for me, it's Minnesotans and Minnesotans alone.
That's right. Lieutenant Governor and candidate for U.S. Senate, Peggy Flanagan, thank you so much for being with us this morning on Choose Views. We got to have you back again. But in the meantime, stay cool, keep fighting, and we appreciate all your hard work.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate you. Bye now. Guys, welcome back to Choose Views. If you are just tuning in, I'm Richard Chu. And thanks to Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, Peggy Flanagan, for being with us. She was very illuminating and very eye-opening in what she said about what's really happening on the ground there in Minnesota. And one of the things that we've talked about before, and we will unfortunately have to talk about it for a while, and that's the dark money that's in politics. And this is the thing that I think is we have to pay attention to this. I say, hey, guys, let's get involved in races that are in other states. Okay, so for example, I always ask a candidate, how can someone who's listening anywhere in the country help in your campaign if they choose to? How can they get involved? And that's because I want us to be able to have not influence in what happens in an election in Georgia with Sean Harris, or an election that takes place in New York or Minnesota or in Pennsylvania or any other place in the country. It's because I think and I won't say I know we have to lean in right now because of the fact that dark money is coming from outside of the state of Minnesota, outside of the state of Illinois, as we saw here during our primaries. That's a heap of money. And they're unloading in Michigan because they're the money that's going up against both Haley Stevens and to some extent went against Mallory McMorrow and is going against Dr. Saeed. That's money that's designed to have the infighting take place between our candidates during the primary, dirty them up with external money from the other side so that by the time they get to the general, whoever wins the primary, they've been so dirtied up and exposed in a not positive way, or exposed in ways that are kind of BS based on who the competitor is on the Republican side, that they are then fighting against the things that they're fighting against the things that they were talking about during the primary against someone that at the end of the day, I don't think Dr. Saeed, Mallory, and Haley they hate each other. They're competing for something that they believe in from a different perspective. Are they wrong? I don't say they're wrong, but they're perceived as someone that's evil. But a lot of that money is coming from outside sources. Haley's been tagged with her affiliation with AIPAC. Dr. Saeed is being tagged by saying that he's a guy that's wealthy, that's made a bunch of money. Who is he to talk to the everyday folk? And Mallory was given some of the same heat. But at the end of the day, if we don't step up, in my opinion, and this is why I speak about it, to help all of our candidates, irrespective of where they are in the country, then we've leave them exposed to what this dark money, like Lieutenant Governor Flanagan spoke about, sneaks in, and it's not even sneaking anymore. It's blatant in Minnesota. So this is why I want us, or part of the reason why I want us to be able to lean in and to help in those cross-state or cross-country elections. Somebody's running for something in Iowa. Okay, then let's find out who's there and what we can do to help them. And the list goes on. I don't need to repeat the list because it's not all in the top of my brain anyhow. But that's the reason. What she talked about, that those ads that run, and they're just gonna it's just gonna be a peppering. I mean, carpet bombing is a word that comes to mind. That will take place in all of our upcoming primaries in blue states, or for offices that we hope are going to be held by a strong Democrat. The carpet bombing, methodology is what's going to come up. Of going to be the way the Republicans play the game, and it's the dark money. It's the listen. We're in a political fight right now, and money is the tool that is. We're fighting against money in politics, but I think we have to be careful. All money in politics in this moment is not bad, because if it were, that's why I say when we hear people talk about they're not taking any corporate PAC money, I step back sometimes and I say, if the corporate PAC is designed by people that have everyone's best interest at heart, then that's not a bad thing necessarily, if it's transparent and it's clear. I mean, I said this a number of times, and unfortunately, I'll probably have to say it again. If 10 of your favorite people got together and put together a PAC to support candidates that you believe in for what they believe in, why is that bad? So we have to make sure that our candidates aren't just saying the rote words. I'm not going to ever take any corporate PAC money. Okay, well, I'm going to put together a PAC of 10 great people that you admire and they follow you and they believe in you. You're not going to take the money that's going to help you beat the person who's taking dark money? Y'all hear me? It's kind of stupid. So let's encourage them to be mindful of that and work toward we have to then work toward being those dotted lines that turn into solid lines to help people in races all over the country. I just believe that. And it's one of those times where I go back to what I was saying to Dr. Glaude, Professor Glaude, about common sense. It's common sense. If that's what we have to fight with right now, we fight with that. Then we get to the table where we're in charge and we can change things. So hopefully, hopefully that message gets across, and we'll talk about it more and more as we go by. There is a concept that I'm going to talk to Qasim Rashid about that I don't want to drop it too soon, but because I want to wait till he's on because of his legal background and his observation about what's happening in electoral politics right now. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Professor Alexandra Nadapoff will be with us. Can't wait to chat with her. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and our good friends at AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being with us this morning. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Today on Live, Local, and Progressive, of course, Joan will be talking to Marjorie Hershey, Professor Emeritus of Political Science at Indiana University, Dr. John Murphy. Jennifer Schultze will also be tuning in with Joan today. And then tonight I'm driving it home. Patty Vasquez will be joined by film reviewer Michael Crowley, Michael Negron, and Adam Duda will be part of the broadcast, and we'll give you more updates on that in a little bit. But right now, one of my favorite things to do is to talk to professors, and boy, oh boy, Professor Alexandra Nadapoff has been someone that, when it comes to criminal justice, she She would be somebody that I would turn to for not only advice, but perspective on what's going on currently with our justice system. She specializes in criminal law, received an honorable mention in 2010 from the American Bar Association, a Silver Gavel Award, written a number of books, one of which is called Snitching, Criminal Informants and the Erosion of American Justice, and most recently, America Unfinished, here in 2026. Good morning, Professor Nadapoff, and welcome to Choose Views.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. I laugh sometimes that, I say this all the time, and this is the first time you've been on the show, how much I really appreciate having our professors and our authors on with any of our social issues that we talk about, any of our economic issues, and certainly any of our political issues. It means a lot to our listeners because you help us inform them of some of the things that they may not even know are out there and being discussed. But take a moment, if you can, Professor, let our listeners know a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into some of the work that you're currently taking on.
Well, I appreciate your invitation to professors, to people whose jobs it is to research and write and think and grapple and come to maybe contested conclusions. I think we're at a moment in American history where if we don't grapple, if we don't, really dig down into the hard issues, we're all gonna regret it later. So this work that that we're here to talk about today is really about that. But a little bit about me. So I've been a law professor for good 20 years now. Before I was a law professor, I was a federal public defender in Baltimore. So I worked in really in the belly of the beast, as it were, in the heart of the criminal system. And you might say I've never recovered from what I learned. On this subject of today, the state of our democracy in the criminal system has been fraught and struggling and unacceptable for a very long time. And so today we are looking around and looking at other parts of our democracy that we're worried about, that we're concerned about. But to be a little dark for a moment, I've been worried for a while about how we treat ordinary people, about how our government mistreats ordinary people, how the executive branch wields power in an unreliable and unprincipled way. So here we are with this book, which you mentioned, America Unfinished. I am the editor of this book. I didn't write this book. With my co-editor, I brought together most of the Harvard Law School faculty to write about the things that they are grappling with. So that's how we got here.
Yeah, your co-editor, Guy Charles, if I got my names correct, you guys decided that it was time to let that those lessons learned from the belly of the beast be a part of a broader conversation. And yesterday I had the blessing and honor to have Professor Eddie Glaude on to talk about similar stuff in terms of, not your title in terms of America Unfinished, but his latest book, which talks about kind of the same thing. We've never really gone deep enough to acknowledge the problems that we have in many categories in our country, but particularly when it comes to social justice, when it comes to criminal justice, and of course to racism and sexism. We haven't dug in deep and acknowledged that those are the problems that just keep resurfacing, and until we dig deep enough and say that those are some of the core problems in the country, we aren't going to be able to go forward and be the great country that we say we really are. We'll continue to be aspirational. But will we ever meet a Mendoza line that says we got to a point where we can go, yeah, on these issues, we've gotten it not right, Professor, but we've moved truly forward. I'm fascinated by when you said that a moment ago about going from being in the belly of the beast to being in a professor in one of the most important and revered universities on the planet. What's that transition been like? Talk to us about that.
It's been a privilege. the inspiration for this book, America Unfinished, really came from conversations that my colleague Guy Charles and I have been having for years now as colleagues. What does it mean to be a scholar? What does it mean to be a law professor? And especially, what does it mean to be a law professor at Harvard? Which, as you point out, is an institution of enormous influence, enormous wealth, and an enormous history. We've been doing, the law school has been around for 200 years. And we ask ourselves, what is our obligation as teachers, as scholars, as citizens? And this moment made us feel like our obligation is to grapple out loud and to share as much as possible, to get out of the ivory tower, to get off the city on the hill, to whatever metaphor you want to choose, to get out there and try to contribute to the conversations that we need to have so deeply. And you asked about the transition from being, hanging out in the lockup in Baltimore City Detention Center to, to being a Harvard professor who bluntly gets to get on your radio show. Maybe you would have asked me 20 years ago, but I bet you $5 I wouldn't have been at the top of your list. And so it is an enormous privilege and also a responsibility to have this platform, these resources. And so this book, America Unfinished, is an effort to try to exercise that privilege responsibly.
Well, and thank you for saying it that way as it relates to what would have happened a number of years ago. I think that the privilege that I embrace my responsibility and privilege. I don't get it right every day, and everybody knows I have my favorite phrase, Professor, which is clean up on aisle 7, in terms of the things that I say and talk about and my conversations with guests like you. But at the end of the day, you just touched on something that I think is incredibly important. We all have a responsibility in this process, and we all owe it to ourselves first and then to each other, maybe secondly, if you will, to take on the imperfections that we have, yes, in our legal system, yes, in our economic system, yes, in our social justice system and criminal justice system, so that they are better for everybody, because it's clearly an imbalance, and it has been for decades. So that's what I want to ask you about. If you, in your research and in looking back, do you look back and see a time when our criminal justice system was working in a way that you could say, all right, they were getting it right then? Or, and I'm giving kind of a very biased question, or has it always just been so messed up that we just keep wash, rinsing, and repeating? What do you see from a historical perspective?
Yeah, I think I'd say there's a big mess on aisle 7. If anything, the excitement and the invitation of working in the criminal system is that there's so much we can do that we haven't done. The trajectory of our criminal system has been from a highly decentralized and therefore local and often, quietly oppressive, in the sense that we didn't see it. We didn't know. There was no way to know what was going on in all 50 states, to this enormous behemoth of a governance institution that actually we have better tools today to look at it, to critique it, to gather data, to have fights over it than we ever have. And so I'm kind of a half full person,
okay,
which helps you when you're sitting in the Baltimore City Detention Center, which is, it's extraordinary in the face of a system that ruins the lives of so many ordinary Americans, that there are so many people willing to pick the fight to make it better. Millions of ordinary people standing up against aspects of injustice in the criminal system, tens of thousands of lawyers, many judges who are willing to say, no, this isn't right. Is it everybody? No. Is it enough yet? No. But this is what democracy is supposed to look like. And you said we all have a responsibility. And of course, I agree with you. But sometimes that sounds kind of daunting, like, oh no, oh no, we have homework. Everybody has homework. Isn't it enough? Don't I have enough on my shoulders to go to work every day and take care of my kids and figure out how to pay the rent? And the answer is we can each do what we can do.
Thank you.
We can come together in our communities. I think, frankly, Minneapolis was an astounding, beautiful example of how ordinary people who had to get to work every day found a way to meet what they saw to be their civic responsibility. Did they run for office? No. Did they raise $1 million? No. Did they try to do the right thing by their neighbors? And they did. And those opportunities are all around us. This book, America Unfinished, there's 62 different short essays by 62 different, frankly, national legal experts, people who have been doing this for decades. And each one is about a different piece of this huge puzzle that is our democracy. And my hope is that, different readers will be inspired by different sections. But maybe you don't want to read about the Supreme Court anymore. Maybe you're tired. You're sick and tired of hearing about these people. You'd rather read about the struggles of the legal struggles around climate change. What are we doing? What are we not doing? What are we not thinking about? Maybe you'd rather read about our international legal system and how we're backing away from protecting human rights and international peace. There's something in here for everybody who might like to have a civic conversation.
That is just phenomenal in the way you're describing it. I want to take a little bit of a break, and when we come back, I want to talk about another project it's part of the same, but it's a different thing that you've worked on, and we'll talk a little bit more about the book. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, WARR 1520, AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu, and we're talking with Harvard professor, Dr. Alexandra Natapoff. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to Choose Views. If you're just tuning in, I'm Richard Chu, and we're talking with Harvard Law professor and author, editor of the great new book, America Unfinished, 250 Years of Law and Governance, edited by Professor Natapoff and Professor Guy Charles. Do I have this correct? There are over a collection of over the 1,000-word essays are from various professors and contributors, but what's unique about them, and going back to what you were saying, they contribute different parts of the optics of what's happening with governance and with law, not just in the country, but internationally and so many other parts of our system. Why that direction? And I'm saying that it's truly out of curiosity, Professor. What made you were sitting in your office one day, you had your feet up, and you're like, I got it. Did you have a moment like that? And not to oversimplify it, but you know how our brains work. So talk to us about where that came from.
Okay, so I was sitting in my office, I had my feet up. I don't know how you knew that. And I was grappling with this question that you and I were talking about before the break, which is, what is our responsibility? And I thought, what is my responsibility as a scholar, as a teacher, as a professor at Harvard Law School with all these resources and, frankly, these people at my disposal? And I thought, what should Harvard Law professors be doing? And the answer is, we should be talking and writing and sharing. We should be getting out of the building. We should be getting out of the tower. We should be engaging these extraordinarily important and complicated questions that we've been studying, frankly, for decades. So I got up, I took my feet off the desk, I walked out of my office, I went down a couple of the doors to my colleague Guy Charles's office. He and I have been having these conversations for years. And I said, don't say no. I have an idea. It took him about 10 seconds. We should do that. and not just us, but our whole faculty.
Wow.
And so we reached out. We reached out to the entire Harvard Law School faculty, every single Pulitzer Prize winner, every single MacArthur genius, every single columnist, every single person who has written many, 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 many books. And we said, this is a moment when we should come together and share our work. We each share our work all day, every day. That's literally our job. But we should do it together, and we should do it in a way that will be accessible to as many people as possible. So that's how this book came about, and that's how we ended up with 62 different short, 1,000 words. These are not law review articles. They're more like an op-ed length insight into one issue, one question written by an expert in that field.
And they're digestible. I've confessed this so many times, Professor, that I will buy a book, and I'm still a book buyer. I love to have the actual tangible thing in my hand, or a report. I will get it because I like having it. I want to dog-ear the pages. I want to highlight it and be able to go back to it and put index cards in it and all the rest. And so I oftentimes will read something or I'll buy something because there's 3 chapters in there that really catch where my brain is at that moment. I'll buy it. I'll read those 3 chapters, but 2 months later, there's 3 more chapters that I've found compelling, and I'll read them. And when I look at how you've laid out this work, it seems to be, in some ways, written for that person's mindset that may not want to read from front to back, but they may start and go from back to middle and then go back to the back again and then start at the beginning and finish. And that's to me sometimes how our brains do work, which is kind of cool that you guys put it together in this way where you can take out what you like. You can go get something from it that's specific to where you are in this conversation and then go back for more later. Am I right about that?
Yeah, and thank you. I'm so glad it worked for you. That was our intent, that not everybody can think about everything all the time.
Yeah.
But we have things on our mind, and everybody has something different on their mind. Maybe you're worried about how we're running our economy and the profound economic inequality that we have permitted to persist and indeed increase. Maybe you're worried about AI. Maybe you're worried about the Supreme Court and its relationship to the president. And maybe you're worried about Congress and how it is or is not meeting this moment. And I think of this a little, it's a little bit like a cookbook.
Yeah.
You know, you don't read a cookbook from the beginning to the end. You go in and you find the thing you need at that moment, and you look for recipes that inspire you and help you. And I think about this book a little bit like that.
Wow. You've just freed my brain from all the people in my world that go, you don't read cover to cover? No, I have. Sometimes I do, but I never thought of it like that as in terms of a cookbook. Okay. You just freed me. That's good to know.
I'm thrilled.
Professor, talk to us a little bit about something that you and your colleague, Mr. Charles, were part of earlier this year. And I hope I've got this right. The Rule of Law 101. Talk a little bit about that.
I'm so glad you asked about that. Let me flag something.
Okay.
For your readers, because I know we don't have forever, and I just want to get this on the table. So ruleoflaw101.org is a series of educational and pedagogical resources that I put together and I share for free. They are videos from 10 of maybe the leading constitutional law scholars in the country. I'm privileged to know them all, so I track them all down and ask them to contribute. And they each teach us how to read a case, a key Supreme Court case in their area of expertise. It's on YouTube for free on the website, ruleoflaw101.org. The idea is anybody who's interested can take a look. America Unfinished, this book, also has a little bit of that spirit of sharing. So you said you like to buy books.
Yes.
And I do too. It's a little bit of a challenge for me to stop. Yeah, I know.
I knew it.
The piles are getting a little high around my house. And I hope people will buy this book and dog ear it and go through it. But we're thrilled that MIT Press, who is the publisher of this book, has agreed that in 6 months, starting in 2027, the book will become open access, which means it will be free online for anybody to read anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. And it's part of this spirit of conversation and sharing that everybody needs to be part of this conversation, wherever you are, whoever. You don't need to be a lawyer. You don't need to be a scholar to care about these questions. And we wanted to make sure that everybody who was interested got a chance to engage these questions, even if it turned out that, $26 was a little tough at the moment. So we're really happy and grateful to MIT Press for agreeing to do this. So ruleoflaw101.org is free. This book is designed to be accessible. America Unfinished is designed to be accessible if you buy it, and then if you need to hang on because you need the $26 for something else, it will be accessible. And we hope that all these things will contribute to a richer, deeper, public, civic conversation about these issues, frankly, that affect us all.
I appreciate you letting folks know that, because that's how we connect, is making sure that folks know how they can be involved in something, I believe. And you said this earlier in the segment. I will say this real quickly because we do have a short amount of time left. Professor, I'd love to have you back on the show again. I'm sitting here just like locked in listening to what you're talking about and why you're talking about it as much, as well as the content. Because the connection is where a lot of times, you said earlier, you don't have to be a law professor or a legal scholar or but to be connected to something that allows you to be part of this process is what we all hope we can put out there for people. One last time, Professor Natapov, let folks know how they can find you, how they can grab the book if they choose to purchase it before we wrap up today.
Thank you so much. And any time that you invite me back, I'd love to continue this conversation. It couldn't be more important for all of us to be part of it. So my name is Professor Alexandra Natapov. If you go to the Harvard Law School website, I'm right there. There's only one Natapov. I'm easy to find. Links to all these materials are on the Harvard Law School website. There's a whole page devoted to America Unfinished with videos and excerpts and resources. The book itself is for sale. MIT Press is the publisher, but you can get it at your independent bookstore or Barnes & Noble, or of course online, where you usually get wherever you get your piles of books. And I can be reached through the Harvard Law School website.
Thank you so much for being with us, Professor. We look forward to having you back soon. Have a great, safe weekend. Bye now.
Bye now.
773-763-9278 is the number. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820, 1520 AM, 103.5 FM, AM 950. You know where we are. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to Choose Views. If you're just tuning in, I'm Richard Chu. Thanks to, we got the professors and the legal minds all around us today. Thanks to Professor Natapov for her work and her commentary about the book and about the work that they're doing through Harvard. And they're just really nailing how we got to be all hands on deck right now. And the unfinished business. Dr. Reddy, Professor Glaude said his version of it yesterday. And our next guest is going to have his words about it as well. Good to have my man back. He's the host and creator of Let's Address This on Substack, activist, human rights lawyer, Qasim Rashid. Good morning, Qas. Welcome back to the show.
Good morning, brother. Good to be here. Good to be with you.
Yeah, man. Listen. It's good that you and I don't have literal flamethrowers like the real ones that you see in the movies, because we would be setting some stuff on fire.
Like Hank Scorpio in that Simpsons episode,
yeah,
where he's, yeah.
All right, y'all. Listen, I'm gonna keep it in the fairway, because I know that Qasim and I we can get very salty very quickly about how ticked off we are about things that are happening, but that's a good thing. And actually, one of the things that Professor Glaude said yesterday, and that Professor Nadapov just said a moment ago, is that folks have got to got to be involved. We know that we're all busy. And I like how she addressed that reality. That folks are doing stuff. They're taking care of their kids. They're taking care of their family. They're taking care of all those things. And we still have to, if we care about this thing that we just celebrated, we got to be willing to lean in. I got to ask you this question. This is a personal question for you and for me. I don't want to make any assumptions here. Just because you and I both are men of color, that I have an assumption about where you are. But talk to us about the feeling as well as the literal of the 250th celebration of this place that we hang out in.
You know, I was writing about this the other day, actually, and one of the things that emerged from it is me and a team of activists and attorneys and writers. We're actually organizing a 1,000-mile march through the South.
Yep.
And one of the reasons is exactly what you can suspect, that we need to play a role, right? We need to be meaningfully involved. And I started off my essay talking about how I'm an immigrant to this country. And when we arrived here in the 80s and then arrived in Chicago, one of the things, and I've talked about this before, that I took for granted as a child, that I appreciate more and more the older I get, is that my earliest teachers at the mosque on the south side of Chicago in the 1980s were the black aunties and uncles who marched in the civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. The musicians like Yusuf Lateef, Ahmed Jamal, the black jazz musicians who kind of defined an era of music and laid the foundation for so much of what we've seen today. I thought that was normal. I didn't realize I was in the company of literal giants. And they ingrained in me this understanding that community service is not an optional thing you do, like getting a cup of coffee. It's an obligation that you do, like breathing, that it's something you have to do. It's just something that you do. There's no option around it. And so, you know, as I got older, and of course my parents were pivotal in that as well, as I got older, I was introduced to these voices that we all cherish now, the Malcolm X's of the world, and the Dr. Kings of the world, and the James Baldwins of the world. And then obviously the Frederick Douglass and his essay on what independence means to the black person. Obviously, me not being black, there's I don't want to assume a role that I don't have, but as a person of color, it reflects in many ways as well. And we see that just this week as ISIS killed 3 more people, all 3 of color. Mm-hmm. 2 of them at least didn't even have a warrant for it. They just killed them because they could. I see that now as I look at the 6,888 refugees that Trump has let into this country. And of those, 3 are Afghan. The other 6,885 are white South Afrikaners. It's a very deliberate strategy. And so to get back to your question, I think what 250 means to me is a recognition that we still have a very long way to go to be that, you know, more perfect union that we're called to be. And I'm not content, but I'm also not lacking motivation to get there.
Part of what is a challenge for you and me, when I say challenge, it's not a challenge to us, it's a challenge to others who look at guys like you and me, is that if we're critical of, and Michelle Obama had to deal with this a little bit, if we're critical of the thing that we say that we love, which is the American idea, not literally the country, but the idea of this better place for all people across the globe to be, that if we're critical of it not being there, that we somehow are hating on the country. We somehow don't love the country. We somehow, you know, and then we hear well, then go back to where you came from. For me, right. For you, it's one that means one thing. For me, that means a different thing, because I came from around the way. And, you know, and you kind of did too. I mean, frankly, when you got here, that you just described, where you were raised and born and fertilized into a grown man, came from a community that did exactly what you said we get criticized for. On one day, we aren't doing enough. On the next day, well, they're hating on our country.
Yeah.
So the literal psychological warfare that goes on, and what Professor Glaude said yesterday about, and this really comes from why am I drawing a blank? From James Baldwin, having to leave our reality at the door to walk into other realities is a form of PTSD that nobody else experiences. But yet, to your point, we know that there's work to be done, and we're fighting like hell to get it done. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Baldwin also says that he had to leave this country to confirm that the social terror in his mind was not a fabrication of his mind, but a real social terror that he might die. And I've said this before, and I'll say this to my dying breath. It is actual white supremacy. It is actual fascism, white supremacy, that when a wealthy white male, credibly accused rapist says America isn't great, you make him president. But when anyone else says America can do better, you tell them to go back to their country.
Right. That
is actual white. There's no other way to slice it. You can't tell, because then the next question is, okay, if you want to make America great again, one, you're admitting that America's not great. If I say that, I get told to go back. But if you say that, it's a patriotic call. But here's a better question: when was America great?
And
please explain what era you're talking about. And they can't give you an era because it's either Jim Crow, or it's the antebellum era. It's every admission is, or every time frame they give you is an admission that they're either okay with genocide or misogyny or immigration bans or, some kind of formalized white supremacy with the FHA and the redlining. There's no right answer. They just want an era where white mediocrity was rewarded and black and brown excellence was suppressed by government violent means.
I hope we can clip that last little bit, guys, because that's exactly what. And seriously, Qasim, that's it. White mediocrity was glorified, and black and brown excellence was denigrated. And in the face of that, and so for you guys who are sitting there going, "Oh God, here goes Richard again, being preachy about this," hell yeah. Because the more we talk about it, this is one of the things that I said yesterday, Qasim, to Professor Glaude, is I listed some things that were, the reason that white America doesn't have health care and doesn't have security and doesn't have good education. And I listed 6 things that came to mind. I'm trying to grab them right now. Sorry about that. But I listed some things that America doesn't have, that white America doesn't have because of racism, health care, education, national security, infrastructure. And I, it's my top 6. That's not because black folks messing stuff up, or Muslim folks messing stuff up, or Mexican folks messing stuff up. That's because white America's systems doesn't want us to have it, and by virtue of that, white America doesn't get it either.
That's right. This is the book by Jonathan Metzer, a University of Tennessee professor, called "Dying of Whiteness." It's a must-read.
Yep.
Where he points this out, and he interviews. There's one case where he interviews somebody, I think like in Kentucky, some white guy dying of like liver cancer. And Kentucky has an expanded Medicaid. And he goes, I would rather, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically sees himself as dying a martyr. Because if we expand it and those black and brown people get access to it, then we might as well be a socialist country. And I'd rather die as a capitalist than live as a socialist. Just nonsensical, creating a scenario that doesn't exist. And look, the data backs us up. Again, I've written about this, that for the folks who say they don't want government handouts, where was your objection during the Homestead Act giving out 270 million acres of free land to mostly white people?
Yep.
Where was your objection at the 0% FHA loans to white people but not to black people? Where was your objection to the GI Bill given to white soldiers who came back for more but not to black soldiers? Where is your objection to the fact that $200 billion more gets spent on white majority schools than on black and Latino majority schools? It's not that you oppose government handouts, it's that you oppose non-white people getting access to the exact same basic human dignity that you have gotten access to. And there's a study published in the Washington Post in 2008. What happened in 2008? That said, starting that year, white people started to have a higher sense of racial animosity towards social welfare programs. I can't imagine what happened that year that made white people more upset that black and brown people were getting access to, I was just born yesterday, so I don't know what happened in that year. Maybe you can tell us.
No, you weren't, and I'm going to bust you out on that one, and then we're going to go to a break. We can't play the song, but my brother Qasim is, I'll put it in the best way I can, Inishna Allah, Happy birthday next week, July 21st. My man turns 44 with your young
That's
self.
right. That's right. I love it.
Happy
Thank
birthday,
you.
man. We're going to take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago, 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. And our good friends at AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu, and yes, I am talking with Qasim Rashid. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. If you're just tuning in, this is Choose Views, and I'm Richard Chu, and we're talking with our good friend, Qasim Rashid. So a little bit of lightning round, because we're going to try to squeeze a couple things in here before we wrap up. And again, all seriousness, send some love to Qasim. He turns 44 next week on the 21st, and I figured I'd make it as public as I possibly can, make him embarrassed, have him blush a little bit, and all that good stuff. But it's hard to get to 44. You haven't got to 50 yet, man. Wait till when you hit 50, I'm telling you, you will have a moment. You'll be sitting in the house somewhere and you'll go, damn, I'm 50 years old. Trust me.
I can't wait.
I've been there.
I'm fortunate that I'm healthy. I got a sore back right now because I thought I'd be smart to play ball with 20-year-old kids. It was a bad idea, but I'm fortunate that overall I'm healthy.
You were hooping with some 20-year-olds?
I was trying. I was failing, but you know how it is, right? Man. You know how it is. But I'm enjoying aging. I'm blessed.
No, I don't know how. Here's what I'll tell you. I don't know how it is. I used to know how it was.
That's right.
But I reached a point, and anybody that knows me will tell you, Richard will sit down. He will be like, you know what? You all go have a good time with that. Because I'm looking at, my next big number is 70. So I want to make sure that when I hit 70, I'm still good. So I don't do things that
you don't look a day past 50. You look fantastic.
Well, thank you, brother.
Look, but I ran the Chicago Half Marathon last year. I got 31st in the Chicago Half Marathon last year. So maybe I was feeling a bit too cocky, but I got to slow it down. You're right.
You got to. I will tell you this: listen to your body. Your body will tell you everything you need to know. So, Qasim, let's walk through a couple things. You and I were teetering on the conversation around white supremacy and white privilege.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit about my question of the day, which is, for those who watched or heard or saw clips, what were your thoughts of the Todd Blanche and Jay Clayton Senate confirmation hearings? It's my question of the day to our listeners and followers all over. But I'm going to cover this from a perspective that you and I can appreciate and many people need to be aware of. That was a display of white privilege if I've ever seen one, and it was a display of white mediocrity and men who they've got the background. Even some of the senators that questioned them, left and right, were like, yo, man, what happened to you? You used to be, and this is coming mostly from the left, if you will, but there were some guys on the right, they're like, man, what happened to you? But this is a moment where white privilege, white male privilege, and mediocrity kind of married up real quick, and we saw it real time. Talk a little bit about what you saw.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I think John Ossoff said it beautifully, that isn't it humiliating to have to debase yourself for the delusions of a president? And I was, Lindsey Graham just died recently, and somebody made a really thoughtful comment. It said that, I'd known Lindsey Graham for a long time, and I came to the conclusion that he was going to plan to outlive Trump and then rehabilitate his image afterwards. And obviously that didn't work out very well. And I think that's kind of the message that I want folks to think about here, that history is recording in excruciating detail who acted how in these situations. And it's going to remember, it's going to recall. And I'll expand it a little bit more from your own conversation. I'm in Congressman Bill Foster's district. And 2 days ago, my phone blew up because people were texting me that, hey, you're super critical of him, but he just joined the Block the Bombs Act to stop, funding Netanyahu for this genocide in Gaza. And I said, one, it's performative because it's nearly 3 years after this genocide started. And so 100,000 people are already dead. But two, if I know Foster, I know that he's doing this to give himself cover later on. And lo and behold, yesterday, he votes against the amendment to stop funding Netanyahu as he's committing this genocide.
He wasn't one of the 100.
No, he chose to continue to fund genocide. And so I'm like, he signs on to a Block the Bombs Act that he knows will not pass under Trump, under any circumstance. But then when he has a chance to actually vote to block the bombs, he goes, no, we're going to send 3.3 billion more. That's white male wealth privilege in all its disgusting glory, if you want to call it that. And my answer to everyone who sees that is channel that anger and rage into activism. Do something productive, because as angry as we are, we have to also recognize we got 104 people to recognize in Congress that we cannot continue to fund this genocide. You and I are old enough to remember just a couple of years ago where AIPAC went after Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman and got them out of Congress because they refused to sign off on these arms sales to Israel. Same with Marie Newman. And now we've got 104 members of Congress saying, no, the hell with that. We can't keep doing this, including Nancy Pelosi, which, if you recall, Nancy Pelosi, the famous quote from her, go ahead.
No, you got it.
The famous quote from her is that if all of Congress fell down and all that remained were the pillars, that would be the American-Israel relationship. She voted to stop funding Israel as it commits to genocide. And so, we're making progress. It's slow. It's painful. People are dying, and we can't stop for a moment, but we are making progress, and I want to call that out too.
Here's the thing that I want to come back to on that point. Making progress. That is part of what we are saying we are trying to do. Look, listen, y'all. Hear me out. There's things that none of us are at the place we want to be in the moment we are right now. I can tell you if that were the case, then civilization would die. Think about that. If we were at the place right, Qasim? I mean, not to be overly philosophical here, but that is why we stay in the fight, because we're not where we want to be or where we believe we should be. That goes back to what Professor Glaude said. That goes back to what Professor Popp said earlier. It's because we're striving to get us past where we are to that better place, that whatever you want to call it, spot. And so when folks like Qasim get in somebody's backside about what they're not doing, it's not because he's just angry and ain't got nothing to do. It's because he's trying to get us to that place that he can go back to when he was a little guy, that those teachings that he got from those great leaders, to be in a moment that represents that type of life. Am I crazy, Qasim? I don't want to be speaking for you, but, that's...
No, you're right. You're exactly right. I mean, that's it. I was talking to Grammy Award-winning musician Malik Yusuf just yesterday or the day before, and that was the exact point he made. He goes, the struggle... He goes, people commend me for my struggle to get to where I am, but let me tell you, I wouldn't trade that for the world, because it's the struggle that humanity needs to get to the next level. I was also speaking with Dr. Ilyasa Shabazz, the daughter of Al-Hajj Malcolm X. And Malcolm X, I think, has one of the best quotes about progress. James Baldwin has the other one that I love, where he says, he's asked if we've made progress. And he says, I will never say we've made progress. If you stick a knife 9 inches in my back and pull it out 6, that's not progress. If you pull it all the way out, that's not progress. Progress is healing the wound that the blow made. And they haven't even begun to pull the knife out. They won't even admit the knife is there. And that's the problem we're dealing with right now, that these people who are preventing progress won't even admit there's a problem. And we got to deal with that first.
That's what I keep saying. And it's the most... profound way of healing ourselves is to acknowledge that there's pain in the first place. And it's sometimes as basic as, why is my back hurting? Because I play ball with the young guys, and let's address the fact. I mean, I'm not singling you. I'm just saying this in the most holistic way.
You're right.
Maybe I shouldn't do that next time. Maybe I should bring the balls and hang out and cheer. But that's right. You're still part of you're still part of enjoying it, but you just decided to do it differently. And y'all know me by now. That's not me trying to tell Qasim how to run his life. It's me hearing that he's got something that maybe he should adjust a little bit. We all have it. In our social conversations, in our economic conversations, in our political ones, we have those. And I say that for our Caucasian brothers and sisters and any of the other brothers and sisters of color who don't acknowledge that we do, you're fooling yourselves. And go ahead, Qasim. I'm sorry.
I'll agree. And I want to add this point, too, that Malik made to me, that it's a really thoughtful point. He goes, we need to obviously differentiate between white supremacy and white people. And he goes, because where we are now is the best version of white people that this country's ever had. We have more white allies than we've ever had. And I think that's important to note. And I think part of the problem is the culture wars that are fought that make us think it's scarcity. It makes us think that, more rights for you means less rights for me. And we just got to get past that mindset, because that's just not the case. Making sure you have healthcare as a human right does not mean my costs are going to go up. It actually means they're going to go down.
They're going to go down. That's a law of large numbers. That's my background. The more people in the pool, the less expensive it is for everybody in the pool. Sorry.
That's right. That's how insurance works, by the way. And universal healthcare just means the exact same concept without the executive pay overhead to buy their third private jet and fourth mansion. It's not a complicated calculation. But if we keep falling into these culture wars, then we miss the point and we start to fight one another over this false scarcity mindset. Dr. King talked about this in his Nobel Peace Prize winning speech, that we are at a place in the world now for the first time in history that scarcity is no longer a thing. We have enough, more than enough to produce. Let's just create the opportunities for people to get access to them.
Yeah, and that's the fight, guys. Qasim takes it on every single day, and I try to as best I can. That's the fight, is to encourage folks to understand that just because we're complaining about something and that we point something out, it doesn't mean that we hate the thing.
That's right.
We hate what the thing does. We hate the system that it causes and the pain that it causes for so many people. And again, when we put our heads down on the pillow each night, the goal is what can we do tomorrow to make this thing better for all of us? Not, Qasim will tell you this, and I will tell you this. It isn't just about making things, and we just both said this in our own way, for people of color. Yeah, that's greatly important. But as, people of color have the foot taken off their necks, proverbially, everybody gets their foot off their neck, because if you look around at the great things that all of us have done, it just continues to magnify and grow. So I hope that people understand that sometimes you need to out these things so that you can understand where you really are, and then you can chart a path forward to make things actually better, which is kind of where we started about, our 250th and how we make the next 50 pretty doggone good. So, Qasim, how can folks find you, man, and get with the work that you're doing?
I'm very easy to find. Just my name at Qasim Rashid, QASIMRASHID, across all socials. My Substack's at QasimRashid.com. No paywall. You can become a paid subscriber if you want. But the most important thing to me is to make sure folks have access. And this is great. I do a lot of these interviews, and with you, the 30 minutes goes by faster than anything else. So I appreciate the dialogue always.
I appreciate you, and tease the hell out of him about his old self turning 44 next week. Send him some love, guys. Make sure you send him a shout out and say happy birthday, Qasim. Thanks for being in the fight with us, brother. Stay strong, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Peace out, brother.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. All right, guys, we did it. Qasim Rashid, professor, I shouldn't call him a professor. He's not. He's a great legal mind. But Professor Alexandra Nadapoff and Peggy Flanagan, who's a lieutenant governor of Minnesota, who's running for the U.S. Senate in that state. Thanks for you guys hanging out with us. Thanks to Maddie B. Thanks to my man Henry for keeping us on the rails. Tomorrow we'll be back. We got our good friend Karen Byrne from True Blue Politics Podcast will be hanging out with us. So that'll be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, you guys, stay tuned for the Stephanie Miller Show. And as always, take a deep breath and make your life count. We'll see you tomorrow.